when towns started building skate parks in the late 90s or early 2000s, there were a lot of companies that would say, oh, here's sort of like turnkey opportunity, you know, like, so like prefab ramps that are just like the most generic, basic, dull, unimaginative stuff, but it got the city to be able to say, well, we built something. It was like hiring, you know, just some random person that doesn't know the dimensions of a basketball court to build a basketball court or a tennis court. Listen to the skaters, hire a good company to design it and build it so that it's not like an afterthought. It's like, no, skateboarding is actually a really cool thing.
Hey, what's up? I'm Corey Davenport.
I'm Nicole Gorey.
So we're joined by Jonathan Harms. You were a professional skateboarder, but couldn't quit your day job. That's what you said before we introed. You now work at a library and you're a photographer. Do you still skateboard?
Yes.
Hell yes. So let's talk a little bit about skateboarding because producer Ryan introduced you to us and said, this dude has been skating since skating has been a thing. So how long have you been skating?
The very first time I did it was probably 1976.
Okay.
Give or take. Kids in the neighborhood had a skateboard and like everybody was just trying it. And I was one of them.
What neighborhood?
I grew up in Baldwin, West County, St. Louis. The first one I ever rode, I think, had clay wheels. So it wasn't even a modern one, but at that time, like 3 years before, the polyurethane wheel had been, invented or, promoted, and it was spreading across the country. St. Louis was a few years behind,
of course,
and the Midwest in general. But
do you remember like who gave you your first board or where you purchased it? Is that a core memory?
Yeah. So my family wasn't like super well off or anything, but I never had any money as a kid. So a kid nearby had this old skateboard with these hard clay wheels from the 1960s, and I bothered him so much to let me ride it that he just finally ended up giving it to me. So that was my first one.
I love it.
How old were you?
I was 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there were no skateboard shops then, so the only place you could get them was if you saw a magazine. You could mail order a few of them, but otherwise, like stores like Target and Venture had them, and they were just toy things compared to what they are nowadays. So I would go to Target with my family. There was one like a mile away, and we'd shop there, and I would just salivate over all the skateboards that they had. And so the first one that I ever got of truly my own was my parents bought it for me for my birthday. It wasn't this exact one, but it was this exact model.
Oh,
California freeformer, like 24 inches long, made of polypropylene. It has like a rough pebbled surface on the top, so you didn't need grip tape, and the polyurethane wheels with loose ball bearings in there, so like it looks like little BBs in there. So, and I rode one of these for like a year and a half at least, and loved it.
And you were self-taught, or did you have like that? Did that kid that you annoyed for a skateboard help you, or was he just like, here you go?
He didn't stick with it for very long. He was just a normal kid that had other kid interests. But I did meet another guy that I went to school with in the same grade that he was really into it, and so he lived like a mile away, and so my friend Steve, and so we would get together as often as we could.
So skateboarding has like a whole culture to it. Did you fall into
now? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say back then, was it just skateboarding, or was there like the skateboarding, the shoes, the punk rock?
No, nobody knew what they were really doing.
Okay.
1973 is when the urethane wheel came out. That's really what launched modern skateboarding, because it was grippy and fast and smooth, whereas the old clay wheel boards, which they're not clay, they're like a mixture of like ground walnut shells and some sort of binder and maybe some sort of clay type material. These you would hit a rock, and if you'd hit a rock, it would just stop and skid to a stop, and the bearings would fall out of them and all kinds of stuff. So anyway,
so you would just really tear yourself up with
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the early
Stella wants
skateboards,
to board.
the early skateboards were just toys, basically. This was a fairly small one, but and they just repurposed roller skate trucks. That's the axle part, and the wheels were from indoor skates because on a smooth indoor floor, you don't need something that really grips a lot, and you want something that rolls as smoothly as you can. But when you try to take this outdoors, it just doesn't work. In fact, the earliest boards were made with steel wheels on them like this. So
Okay. How old's that board?
this one's from the from the 1960s, probably 64, 65.
Were there skateboard tricks with boards like that? Like, were they doing like half pipes and bowls and ollies?
No, none of that was happening. People were just riding on the street and down hills when it first started. There's a little bit of evidence that people did ride them in empty swimming pool. Just a few people in Southern California. There's a couple of photos. There's one of a guy named Herbie Fletcher, who was a famous surfer, skateboarding in a pool about halfway up the wall in like 1964 or 5. But yeah, mainly it was just riding down the street. There's a famous a live action film called Skater Dater, where all the guys were still riding steel wheels, and it's like about a 25 minute mini love story of 11, 12-year-olds. They're like a little gang that ride around on their skateboards. And then one of them notices a girl, and then she kind of draws his attention away from the gang. And
Oh,
it's like
that's
a coming of
cute.
age sort of story.
So you're telling me Avril Lavigne did not invent the skater?
No, not even close.
I'm shocked.
No.
Totally shocked.
Skateboard culture didn't really develop until the 70s.
Okay,
And after. Like the 70s were a time when skateboarding progressed really fast. Like it went from, just like toy boards like this in 1975 and 76 to within, like by 1977, they had come out with like boards that had what they called precision bearings in there. They're like smooth, quiet bearings. And then, better wheels. The urethane got better. Boards got, in like 2 years, they went from like 6 inches wide to 9 or 10 inches wide. The trucks got wider, the wheels got bigger because people started skating in pools and skate parks cropped up. So the original skate parks were all pretty much designed to mimic either surfing or pool riding. And so, steeper, transition contours and stuff like that, instead of just street skating.
Where did you fall into skate culture, I guess? Like, were you like, I don't know, getting high with your homies and hitting half pipes?
I was not.
Okay.
A lot of people were. So like I was a squeaky clean kid from a really devout religious Lutheran family. It was unusual that I stuck with skateboarding at all. A lot of the best skaters were kids that just kind of didn't give a damn about anything, including their own personal safety. And I was the exact opposite. I was very cautious and, I was a brainiac, and very, very mainstream in just about every possible way. But when I saw skateboarding, it was just like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And there were some, a few commercials once in a great while on TV, and it just it looked so amazing that I had to do it. I wanted to do it. And at the time there was really no video or anything like that, except just the occasional thing on TV, just a brief snippet here and there. But there was a magazine, there were several magazines, but one of them, Skateboarder magazine, was huge in like 77 or 78. Like it was the top selling magazine at like 7-Elevens all across the country, and including Time, Newsweek, and all those, because skateboarding was booming. Anyway, so I absorbed skateboarding from doing it, mainly with my friend Steve, but also through this magazine. And that's where you would see everything that was happening in California almost exclusively, because it was published in Southern California, because that's where the bulk, that's where skateboarding arguably started in Southern California, but people were doing it all over around the same time. But yeah, I I lived at home with my parents. I was, from 1976, I was 12. By 1980, I was 16, and I was a obedient kid for the most part, but I must have had some secret rebel in me because my friend Steve was kind of like the opposite. He kind of, hated his stepdad, and, I lived, kind of vicariously through him. He would be like, "Hey, let's go do this." And I'd be like, "Okay, sure."
So he got you out of your shell a little bit. How did your parents, were they supportive of your hobby, or were they like,
They were okay with it. I think they were just kind of surprised that I kept doing it because I got straight A's in school. I played the cello. I played French horn. I'm sure it just seemed strange to them more than anything. But yeah, I just, I looked at skateboarding in the magazines and I was just like, this is amazing. And it was just, the equipment, the terrain, they had amazing photographers. It was like basically, it was professional journalists that made this monthly magazine, glossy, one issue ended up, like 200 and some pages in the 77 or 78. So there was just lots to consume, and there was, the skateboards were changing so rapidly over this time. So I got to witness it all in real time, like from toy to professional thing. There were interviews, and so you just read what these skateboarders were doing, and some of them, like, it just exposed me to so many things that I don't know what my life would have been like without it.
So besides your friend Steve, who else did you skate with around here?
So one of my oldest and really one of my very best friends ever is Paul Graff, father of producer Ryan.
Hell yeah.
And Paul had, to my knowledge, the first half pipe in the St. Louis area. He built it himself along with a friend or two. And I heard about it again through Steve. But it was like 10 feet tall or a little bit bigger. It was literally a half pipe. So nowadays half pipes have flat bottom in between the walls to give you a little more time to set up. But at the time it was U-shaped. And so Paul built one in his yard, or in his driveway or whatever. And I heard about that and managed to get there just a couple of times. And so that was amazing. I was frankly, I was a little scared of Paul because he had long hair. And I thought, like, he seemed way older than I did. And he was a better skater than I was. So yeah, his ramp was amazing. It was really smooth. And it was challenging. It was really where I kind of learned the basics of skating vertical, and I learned the foundations of it. Yeah, that was amazing. There was a guy named Glenn Stallings who was from DeSoto, Missouri. He and his buddy Dan Gibson built a half pipe down on Dan's farm down there, Dan's parents' farm, and Paul and I went down there to visit them a couple of times in the early 80s. That was amazing. And then there was a couple of brothers, Terry and James Barnes, that lived on Bermuda Road in Florissant or Normandy. And these guys were so good. They could have been pro if they wanted to, but they were just teenagers and they moved on to do whatever. I think James maybe went into the Army. I don't know what became of Terry. If anybody knows Terry or James Barnes out there,
comment, PM him. Yes,
I
come
would
on.
love to get a hold of them and just learn what their life turned out to be like, because they were some of my heroes growing up.
Bet they're teaching their grandkids how to skate right now.
Maybe
I hope they are.
So,
there's so many other people that I would love to mention, but just but those are a couple that definitely were hugely important to me.
Hell yeah. All right. What was the first time you did a trick that was dangerous?
The very first time I stepped on the board. Just riding down a hill is dangerous when you're a beginner.
Right.
You fall, a lot. It's.
When is the first time you got injured?
There's sort of a rite of passage that happens to almost every skateboarder. It's what's called the speed wobbles, where you're going down a hill, generally down a hill, but just anytime you get up to a certain level of speed, And if your trucks are loose, which they have to be able to deflect in order to turn, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get up to a certain level of speed, they can start oscillating kind of uncontrollably, just like out of nowhere. And when they do, you can just be going straight, and then all of a sudden it's like, and then you're pitched off. And so I was going to meet a friend at this park. I'm just riding down my skateboard down the hill, and it turns left, and I get going pretty fast. And then right at the bottom, there's a woman that's walking her 3-year-old across there, and I kind of see him and freak out. But even aside from that, my board, was just going fast enough, and whoop, 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 and I just take 3, gigantic long backslapping steps, try to run it out, and I don't, and I fall forward and just smack my forehead and tear up my shoulder.
Oh, no. Were your parents mad?
Well, no, they weren't. I think the lady gave me a ride home because I was kind of...
How do you feel about the film Gleaming the Cube with Christian Slater? And have you solved any crimes with your friends on your skateboard?
Haven't solved any. I might have committed a couple with that. Trespassing and things like that. When you grow up sort of in the skateboarding desert, so to speak, where anything about skateboarding is just amazing to you, I used to watch Saturday afternoon shows like Wide World of Sports that was on ABC, and then NBC had one called Sports World, where just in the intro, the credits that they run at the beginning, there was a half-second clip of a guy on a skateboard doing an aerial. I would watch that show every Saturday just to see if there would be more skateboarding. So I loved everything about it so much that anything that had skateboarding in it, I just was voracious for it. I'd read the magazines over and over and over again. And, I can still tell you to this day, what photo appeared in what magazine at least in the late 70s.
So who were the professionals back then? There
were professionals, even in the 60s, there were people that actually toured the country doing skateboard demos. Like Patty McGee, she was on the cover of Life magazine, which was one of the biggest magazines in the country at the time, 1964, doing a handstand. She did AT&T commercials, skateboarding through the house to answer the phone and stuff like that. So people did get paid.
And she was a woman. I love that.
Yeah, she was really 18 cool. Or something like that. But yeah, actually, there were 2 Hilton brothers, Dave and Steve Hilton, that were of the Hilton Hotel chain. The orange juice company VitaPact sponsored a skateboard team, and the Hiltons were on that, I think, there was just a couple of professional teams, and they were all 12, 13-year-old kids pretty much. But they got paid a little bit of money. Well, in the 70s, then when skateboards got real, then people actually got paid to skateboard again, and they did demos. But they had signature models eventually, and they would get paid a certain amount per board plus maybe $100 a month or something.
Who was your favorite?
I've had many over the years. In the 70s, the best guy, almost universally considered the best guy, was a guy named Tony Alva, he's 67, 68 now, still skates every day, surfs. He was just. There were amazing people all over the place, but Tony Alva was the Tony Hawk of his day.
I was going to say, Tony's a popular skateboard.
Yeah.
It must be a Tony thing.
Yeah, but he was just pretty much everybody agreed, man, this guy's just, he just has it. And just the way he skated kind of became the template for so many people afterwards. So this board that I've been showing here.
It says Alva on it.
Yeah, so... And it's a stylized signature, but some people say, what is AWA? Because it looks like AWA, but yeah, that's kind of his signature.
Did he sign it too?
Yeah, and so this is a reissue of a board that he made. He was pretty much the first skateboarder that did his own company. So he was sponsored by other companies, but he was just really clear-eyed about things. He was ambitious. He was incredibly talented. He knew how good he was, and so he rubbed people the wrong way because they were like, oh, he's an egomaniac. Well, but he knew what he wanted, and he was like, I'm going to make money. I'm going to do this. And so he did it. And so he started his own company. And so these boards became, this one, it's a reissue of an original board that he one of the first boards that he ever made. I bought this just like 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, so he signed that because he still has the company, Alva Skates.
And have you met him?
Yes. He wouldn't remember me, but
okay.
Yeah. There's a skateboarding Hall of Fame, and I know a guy that was inducted, like Tony Alva was one of the first people inducted in the very first year they had it, like 15 years ago. But anyway.
Where's it at?
It's in Simi Valley, California.
Makes sense.
It would be in California.
It's in a mall.
Okay.
But,
in a mall in
sense.
California is iconic.
Over time, people started collecting skateboards, and there's a guy named Todd Huber who, in the late 90s or something, he just started collecting boards because skateboarding was huge in the late 70s and early 80s, and then it just died. I mean, died. There were just a few people doing it that kept on doing it because it had gotten to the point where the activity was amazing, but there was skate parks were sort of seen as the salvation for skateboarding, but they, due to liability insurance reasons, nobody could make any money doing it. And so all the parks that had opened, hundreds of skate parks across the country opened, including a couple here in St. Louis area in the late 70s. But by like 1980 or 81, all but like a handful were already out of business because they had paid money for all the concrete or whatever they're made out of. They had to rent the land or whatever. And then they had liability insurance, and skateboarding was dangerous. And so people would get injured, and basically the insurance became unaffordable. So from like 1980, 81 or so to like another 5 or 6 years, skateboarding was really dead. I mean, it was only super hardcore people that stayed with it.
Were you one of them?
I was one of them, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right.
And in 1981 is when Thrasher magazine started. So the
Hey, we're Thrasher Vans.
Yeah, exactly. So Skateboarder magazine went out of business because it was a glossy color magazine with real journalists doing this. And they couldn't afford to, like, their advertising dried up. So they just kind of went out of business. They tried a multi-sport magazine for a year or two called Action Now, which was sort of like the X Games culture before that existed. So it was like skateboarding, BMX, motocross, mountain biking, roller skating, surfing.
Was there like a unspoken like competition, not even competition, but beef rivalry between skateboarders and rollerbladers?
So rollerblades weren't around yet.
Oh, okay, they weren't.
It was quad roller skating. Quad roller skating got really huge, at least in Southern California, in like 1979, 80 or whatever. Like people in Venice and just on the beach and stuff. Roller skaters went to skate parks as well. And in fact, I was going to share something way too obscure.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
So,
we love it.
Yeah,
we love the deep cuts.
Yeah.
So one of the most important tricks in skateboarding on vertical terrain was called the McTwist. It was invented by a guy named Mike McGill in 1984. It's a 540-degree sort of flip.
What?
And that it was incredible. Like the first time I saw it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Well, the first person to do a 540-degree spin, aerial spin out of like a pool or something was a roller skater. They skated side stance. So like not parallel, but like side stance. So it was kind of like they led with one foot, just like a skateboarder does, but they were on skates. And this guy, Fred Blood, would like huck these 540-degree spins. And Mike McGill saw that and eventually kind of wondered, I wonder if I can do something like that on a skateboard.
Okay.
So yeah, roller skating in some ways, in that one way, progressed skateboarding really a lot too. But yeah, there was no real beef then. It wasn't until rollerblades in the like late 80s or so, and then mid 90s and stuff. That's when sort of beef started happening. But that was due to other reasons.
So what were you doing during the lull of skateboarding?
I was going to school. I was in high school in like 79, 80, 81. I graduated in 1982. And that was just dead times. And because of my super conservative Lutheran upbringing, my parents sent me and my sister, who's 2 years older than I am, to this Lutheran high school in Wisconsin. So I was going to school in Wisconsin and playing basketball and running cross country and trying to
That was
skateboard.
like a boarding school? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had Lutheran boarding schools.
I didn't either.
Interesting.
It was a Catholic school, and it was just right here.
I wonder how
Right.
like different it is from Catholic school.
Well, mine was at the time. Mine was strange. You know, there was a lot of hazing. There was like self-righteousness, but also like rebellion. And so, you know, you'd go to church every Sunday, you go to chapel every day. But, you know, some of the people that went on to become ministers were some of the most nasty, you know, jerky people I've ever met in my life as teenagers. But
were you skating up there?
not much.
Okay.
I would skate in the gym once in a while. I'd like roll off the stage in the they had like a stage.
But you did have your skateboard.
Yeah, I in my dorm room, I had like indoor-outdoor carpet, and I would practice ollies in my dorm room, and it's like boom, 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 you know, like making a lot of noise.
Let's talk about some of the places where skate parks were in this area.
Okay, yeah.
Like, where were the hot spots to skate around here before it went dead?
Right. So there were two main ones in the St. Louis area. The first one to open was in St. Charles on Highway 94. It was called, I think it was called Skate Wave. Is that right, Paul?
It sounds right.
Yeah. And it was at a place called Stop and Sock Fun Center. Which was like batting cages, and maybe they had mini golf, and they opened a skate park there, which was like 3 concrete runs. There was that one. And then in 79, would you say, Paul? There's one that opened in Bridgeton on St. Charles Rock Road called Earth Surf. You could see it from Highway 70 as you went by. And in fact, as best I can remember, I was on a field trip, probably to McDonnell Douglas or something like that from out in Baldwin. And the bus rolled by on Highway 70, and out the right side of the window, I saw this skate park there. Like, I was just...
And you hadn't seen it before?
No.
It was your first time seeing it?
Get off the bus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wish I practically jumped out the window. I wish I could have. I never asked my parents for stuff like that anyway. It just was not the way things worked. So, but yeah, so there were these 2 skate parks in St. Louis. Skateboarder magazine, they would have a section like new skate parks all across the country. And then they even had like skate park coupons where you could clip them. And if you could go there, you'd get like a discount on it. And there was one in Springfield, Illinois called Country Surfin', not surfing, but surfin'. Springfield's like 100 miles away from St. Louis, but that could have been the moon for all I knew. A lot of them opened in like all across the country in like little like mini golf places or batting cages places that were, you know, they ran ads in like the Wall Street Journal at the time too, like the 1970s greatest business opportunity, skateboarding. You know, so people lost their
They were like
shirts on
the
that.
escape rooms of their time.
Yeah, but no, it was a huge business opportunity.
Do you know the oldest skate park that is still now open?
In the U.S., it's almost certainly, this is off the top of my head, there's one down in Jacksonville, Florida called Kona Skate Park. That opened in 1970, I think it was 77. And it's essentially never closed. The same family owns it today that opened it.
Wow.
This guy named...
You ever skated that?
Yes. Been there twice. I was there in 88 one time, and then I went in 2022 for a contest. So yeah, the guy that originally opened it was a guy named Martin, I think they say Ramos, and his son, Martin Ramos, now runs it along with his wife and their family. So it's been in the family the entire time.
That's awesome.
That is. I mean, Florida has
Yeah.
a bad rap, but that's a pretty cool thing about Florida
Yeah.
that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We'll be back.
And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the 80s.
Sounds good.
All right. So we're getting back to
back.
We're back with Jonathan Harms.
Sometimes I want to say you're back. Let me sometimes say we're back.
Okay.
Okay.
So you have to say it in actually, no, you did win the right to say we're back because you knew the dinosaur movie was from 93 and not 94. Which is crazy. You knew something more about a dinosaur movie than I did.
I just like movies.
I just like dinosaurs. So, we're back and we want to talk about... So there was a lull in the 80s with skateboarding.
Yeah.
You're up in this boarding school in Wisconsin, being Lutheran.
Yep.
So let's talk about whenever it kind of got up again. Like, Like, you went to college, right? Or
Went to 2 years of college on the same campus that I went to high school on.
oh boy,
Yeah,
okay, okay. So I'm guessing you came back after that and started skating again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd come home for the summers and like over Christmas and sometimes for spring break, and I would I'd skate then whenever I could. At some point, some friends that I met in like 81 or so, built a half pipe ramp, and so I got to ride that more, and got to skate more
In
than
this
I ever
area?
had. Yeah, yeah. So I'd skate whenever I could. It's just that up there, it was like 3 months of what is it? 9 months of winter, 3 months of bad sledding or something like that.
Yeah.
So didn't get to do much up there. Although actually, side story so that Kona skate park in Jacksonville, Florida, they made their own magazine just called Skateboard. It was supposed to be, it was essentially a zine that was just to promote like among local skaters. They gave it away for free. But after Skateboarder magazine died, and Thrasher I had a subscription to Thrasher, but any little magazine that had skateboarding in it, I wanted to get. So you could write for a free subscription to the Kona skateboard magazine.
Okay.
And so I did. I wrote a letter and sent a couple of photos from this ramp in Kansas City that my friend Steve had moved to Kansas City as a senior in high school. I went there over one summer and we took some pictures, and I sent him a couple of pictures to this magazine because it was like, hey, here's what we're doing in Missouri. And they put my address at the end of the letter that they printed in the magazine from Jacksonville. Well, it turned out there was a guy in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that was the town where I went, Eau Claire, who lived there, who had a half pipe in town there.
What?
And he saw my letter in this Florida skateboard magazine. He wrote me a letter saying, hi, I have a half pipe here in Eau Claire. Write me back if you want to get rad or something like that. And so I got to,
cool.
I mean, what are the odds of that?
I mean, back in those days, you opened those letters,
nuts.
you're probably safe.
Yeah,
no.
yeah, right. Yeah, like there was no doxing,
I like how it brought something brought you guys
Yeah.
together.
Oh, it was.
So
it
did you
was
skate
amazing.
it?
Yeah, I did. So
Was he rad?
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Cool.
he was awesome. His name was Pete Biebelhausen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pete Biebelhausen wants to get rad with you. Do you accept?
So yeah, he literally drove out to my school because I didn't have a car up there, and he picked me up and we went down, just like 2 miles away downtown where he had this half pipe that he had built, and we skated. And then he knew a bunch of guys from the Twin Cities that eventually came over too. They were amazing, great skateboarders, and so I got to be exposed to people that were so much better than I was, and they were like my heroes. And so I skated. I skated during the summers, and I got to ride Pete's ramp with him a lot, and he drove me around town. We'd find street spots and stuff like that. Eventually, I got my 2-year Associate of Arts degree from that college, and then that was came back home, didn't know what to do, and I eventually ended up working at a sporting goods store nearby, and living at home still with my parents, and skating when I could. I think a lot of skateboarders don't want to admit this, but one of the big reasons that skating took an upturn again in 85 or so was Back to the Future.
I was just about to say. I was just about to ask if that had anything to do with it.
It really did. It was a mainstream impact. It was seen by millions of people.
Absolutely.
And Marty McFly rides a skateboard in that and does all this stuff.
He gets a hoverboard eventually.
Yeah.
He
The
was
next
so
one
dreamy
he did.
in that. As a little girl, I had such a crush on Marty McFly.
Guys that were professional skateboarders were the stunt doubles for Michael J. Fox. There was a Swedish guy that did some of it, Per Wallinder, and
Wait, he actually didn't.
he did a little bit, but yeah, he would skid to a stop and pick up the board and stuff. But yeah, the stunts were done by somebody else. But so that had a big impact. But also, Thrasher magazine had a couple of people behind it and the manufacturers of the time kind of banded together. They were like, if we don't cooperate, we're all going out of business. Mm-hmm. So they pushed a vision of skateboarding, which was very DIY And it was like, all the skate parks are gone. Who cares? Go skate the streets, build your own ramp. And they started having professional contests in people's backyard, on people's backyard ramps. There was one in Lincoln, Nebraska, the Midwest Melee. The first one they did it in 1983 was just a demo, a bunch of pro skaters. But it was a guy that had built a really nice ramp in his backyard, brought a bunch of pros out there, and a couple hundred people show up in this guy's backyard to watch these amazing stunts. And then 1984, they had a contest there that I managed to drive over to with a couple guys from Kansas City, and saw that. And again, it's like a couple hundred people just packed into this guy's suburban backyard watching this amazing stuff. And it just barely made it. I mean, now it's like, oh, skateboarders were always going to do it. But I mean, there was a lot of people, like, it's a very normal thing for people to stop skateboarding when you get a car, you get a girlfriend, or, whoever you are, you tend to...
You calm down, you look after your joints.
Yeah.
But so is this the point whenever like punk rock and like weed smoking got into it?
A lot of the skaters were, just rowdy rebel people. And so, they're drinking, smoking, doing whatever. The magazines were presented as very squeaky clean for the most part, except for in the interviews. Then you'd see that people were kind of wild. Like Tony Alva, the second interview they did with him was like in the biggest issue of Skateboarder ever. It was like, again, like 230 pages or something. And they like did M dashes for all the cuss words, and then people wrote in and canceled their subscriptions. They were like, oh, Tony Alva, he's given us a bad name. But if you look back at what he said at the time, it was so prescient. It was just like, he just knew what the hell was going on. And he was just a real person. So there were always people like Tony Alva and his crew of skateboarders, the Z Boys, which stood for Zephyr Surfboards, which was the shop they were originally sponsored by. Dogtown and Z Boys in 2001 or whatever was a documentary about these guys. They weren't the very first people to ever do this, but they really popularized skateboarding in backyard pools. There was a drought in Southern California in like 75, 76. And so people had to drain their pools or they couldn't fill them. And so there were all these empty pools around there. And they were like, oh my God, this is amazing to skate in. It was way better than just going down the street. And skate parks were just barely beginning. So they were, barging into somebody's backyard to skate their pool is not...
squeaky clean.
Yeah, it's not squeaky clean. And so, that was an early example of it's just like, and, there's a really famous quote in skateboard circles from the one of the guys that helped run the Zephyr Surf Shop. He's been kind of like this behind the scenes guru. His name's Craig Stesick. 200 years of technology has created a vast concrete playground, but it was the mind of 11-year-olds that could recognize the potential. So things that were designed not for skateboarding, but skateboarders were like, this is amazing.
Like railways for grinding.
Yeah. And just ditches, drainage ditches and spillways. And, in California, they have like catch basins for rain and stuff like that, reservoirs, empty swimming pools, So it was, there's no consequences hardly when you're a minor. And so, most skateboarders were minors, at least going back then. And so it's like, shit, why wouldn't we go in somebody's backyard pool? It's like, what else we got to do, So
fair.
That was, even if it wasn't consciously pushed, that was always kind of inherent in the activity.
So punk rock and skateboarding went hand in hand because of their, they push the envelope.
Right. And
so whenever you'd go to these these contests, did they have bands there or was it just people skating?
So like this one in Lincoln, Nebraska, for example, the Midwest Melee, there wasn't a band playing. Like, I think they may have had a boombox or something, just playing some tunes there. But the night of the contest, after it finished, there was a club downtown that, sure enough, there was a band or two playing. In fact, one of the top pros, the guy that won the contest, Steve Caballero, was in a band at the time called The Faction, which was was a bunch of skaters, his skater friends, and they played punk rock. And
makes sense.
So punk rock itself, arguably, most people would say it started, 75, 76 in England or the Ramones or, whatever. I'm not even going to get into that.
Right.
But, there's
right.
a whole
we don't care if it started in LA, New York.
A lot of punk in the US happened in Southern California.
Yep.
And, eventually it kind of grew from like the Hollywood punks of like the late 70s to like hardcore bands like Black Flag and the Circle Jerks and Adolescents and Agent Orange.
Love all those.
And skaters were among the, like a lot of their first fans were skateboarders, and like a couple of very influential skateboarders in their interviews were like, oh yeah, I'm into punk rock now. So like, they were surfers before and they had long hair and stuff. And then, next time you see them, they got a buzz cut and they're like into, Buzzcocks or the Sex Pistols or the Clash or the Damned or something like that. And in their interviews, they were like, oh yeah, we used to listen to Ted Nugent and stuff, but now it's like these bands are so cool. And so, like at least people like me, you'd read that and like, yeah, okay, I'm going to check them out.
Did you like the punk rock?
Yeah, it was a little weird at first.
I was going to say Lutheran boarding school to punk rock.
That's why I keep on just asking if your parents were worried, just because I could imagine like kids
they were
back
worried.
then.
They were definitely worried.
Like, what the hell is going on with
I hid most of it from them, frankly.
Yeah, I was going to say.
As you should have.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just want to ask, we keep on talking about competitions, but I don't think you ever said, do you know when the first, because it originated in California, the skateboarding thing. But when did the competitions start among them? Was it that long ago too?
Yeah. So like there was a national championships held in Anaheim in 1965 that was televised live on Wide World of Sports at the time. And there were both boys and girls divisions. So they crowned national champions, and they had a slalom event down this basically masonite hill it wasn't even a hill, it was a ramp that they built that had flipped over masonite on it with the rough side up. And they were riding these clay wheeled boards. So there was competitions as far back as then.
As it began. Okay.
Yeah. But that was literally like for a year or two, like basically about a year, more or less. Outside of California or maybe Florida, there was kind of nothing else. In the 70s, though, when like millions of people across the country were skateboarding, there were little contests that cropped up all over the place. St. Louis County held one in 1978. That was the first one that I went to.
I was going to say, when did you start competing?
Yeah, that's my next question.
Yeah. Like Earth Surf Skate Park had a couple of local competitions too, just like they had a quarter pipe and they had a pool contest because they had a pool there. But the St. Louis County one was the first one that I did. And it was just like advertised in the Suburban Journal newspapers or whatever, in May something or other, I think it was, there's going to be an all county skateboard competition, enter here. And, it was amazing, like they had I think it was like a Friday night, they had it indoor on the ice rink inside, not the ice, but like the smooth floor that was normally the ice rink. That was a freestyle competition, which was like huge at the time. You just like do tricks on flat ground on your boards. And then the next day they had a downhill and a slalom competition on this kind of mellow hill right outside. And so I went to both of those, and you'd see all these skateboarders, running around, screaming around inside on the ice rink, and you'd like learn how to like go really fast and then grab your board and kind of slide sideways and then screech to a halt. And I learned that night because I saw all the other kids doing it. So one competition is the equivalent of 20 days of just skating on your own because you see all this cool stuff.
How'd you do in the competition?
The freestyle, I was terrible. I didn't, I did what I could and, wasn't that great, but I had a good time. In the slalom, I had actually practiced that. I used to like set up rocks on the street because I didn't have cones, which normally is what they used. Mm-hmm. But I learned how to do it pretty well. So I got third place in my age group.
In
my first competition.
That's badass.
That is badass.
Yeah. But I got a little trophy with there's a skateboarding trophy. The guy's, doing a little kick turn, his hands are like this. And so I still have that, and it had a ribbon on it. And so
when did you start because we talked before the show a little bit, and you said that you got paid to skateboard a few times. When did that happen?
So, all right. So throughout the 80s and basically throughout the 80s, my main thing that I liked doing the most was riding, big half pipes and ramps and stuff. The skate parks were pretty much gone. And, I got to ride enough of them that I got better. But to be honest, I'm a thoroughly average skateboarder. I didn't learn fast. I stuck with it. Kids that were riding 6 months were better than I was, sometimes. But I had a good time. So I entered a couple of competitions on ramps, like in the, like 87, there was one in Kirkwood, and I got, fourth to last or something, because everybody else was just really, really good, but it was just fun. You just wanted to do your best. So I never even got a whiff of being pro at that. But in the early 2000s, thanks to Paul Graff, who's off camera here now, he called me up, and this was in 2002. He calls me up and it's like, hey, I don't know if you'd be interested, but there's a bunch of guys that get together in Tower Grove Park every Sunday and they do slalom. And I was like, slalom? Because slalom, just like, it just died at the end of the 70s too. Like there was like a 20-year period where nobody did this.
That's where you weave in and out of the cones. Yeah.
Right. So you go in and out of the cones. But sure enough, due to like the internet getting more, being usable, due to things like the X Games, skateboarding had a big surge in popularity.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater too.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And so people that had, stopped skating for 20 years that were like my age, now they're, late 30s, early 40s. They're like, they're settled in life maybe a little bit. And they're like, yeah, remember when we used to do that? And like, oh, we can still do it. And they found that they could. So they had old school skate jams and stuff like that, where people that were teenagers in the 70s and 80s were now, full grown adults. And they were like, man, we can still do this. And it's really fun.
As far as midlife crises go, that's kind of really like wholesome.
Yeah. There was a sort of a resurgence mainly among people that had already done this in the 70s. It used to be big in the 70s. Like there were guys on the cover of the magazine, doing slalom, and there were big competitions and stuff. But once pool riding came in, that would, it
was all aerial
sucked all the air out of the room, because it was amazing. But yeah, people kind of rediscovered it. Anyway, so yeah, once basically I was like, maybe I'll come by and down to Tower Grove. But I did. I almost didn't go that one day, but I took this one old board that I had from the 70s. And sure enough, there were new equipment, new trucks, new wheels, like for this. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. Well, there were these little grassroots contests all across the country. West Virginia, like the first one I went to was in Mississippi, which is like an 8-hour drive away.
What? Mississippi?
Yeah, a couple guys from St. Louis that were into slalom. Some of these guys from Tower Grove, they were like, hey, you want to go down to Mississippi this weekend? I was like, okay. And so we went down there, met these guys, and I'm still friends with these people from Mississippi to this day.
That's awesome.
So anyway, I did better at slalom than I did at all this other stuff. It came to me easier. And so after about a year, I traveled to 2 or 3 contests in the first couple of years, and they held like 2001 through 2005, every year in October, they held a world championships out in Morro Bay, California. And in 2004 and 5, I went out there to that. And that's where I had gotten fast enough that I could kind of compete in the so-called pro division. Again, nobody was making a living off this, but you might make enough to pay for part of your plane ticket.
Empire on it.
Yeah. But like in racing, like slalom racing.
Right.
So,
right.
So yeah, like slalom was, this much, whereas everything else in skateboarding was this much.
Kick
but it was still really fun.
75%.
So do you know any tricks? Or did you?
That's a good question.
So you do.
What's your favorite complicated trick?
Yeah. What is the one that you did that you were really proud that you had a really hard time grasping? That's what
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Okay, so nowadays, for the last 30 plus years, 40 years maybe, it's been like when skateboarders modern, like do a kickflip.
Do a kickflip. That's what you
pop
yell
the
at the
board up and the
skaters.
board flips over and you land back on it.
And everyone claps.
Right. So the original, what people now call a kickflip, was originally called a magic flip or called an ollie flip, because in the 70s, there was a guy that invented what was called the kickflip, but it was different. You didn't pop the board. You stood and you kind of like gripped over the side of it with your instep of your foot, and you jumped and the board flipped over and you landed on it, but you didn't pop it. And that was called a kickflip. I spent hours and hours learning how to do the original kickflip. And,
Okay.
So that was, for a long time, that was like it wasn't my proudest accomplishment, but it was something I really had to work at because it was really difficult. So like now I can still bust out one of those, and, modern skaters were like, what's that? Oh, it's a kickflip. Yeah, it's a kickflip. No, what is it? No, that's a kickflip. That's what was the original kickflip, but nobody cares nowadays, but that's what it was. So, but yeah, like on ramps and stuff, I could do some aerials, and I could do, for a brief time, I could do hand plants where you kind of like go upside down, you kind of do a one-handed handstand, come back down in. And
that was my favorite move to do when I played Tony Hawk, because I did like Tony Hawk. That's the only video game that I really liked.
And I've played a skateboarding, like the Tony Hawk game. I've played it once ever.
Really?
It's just it was never my thing. Video games.
That's fair.
There was an arcade style video game called 720 that, you have to pay to play. That I played a few times because they had one in the skate shop where I worked. But yeah.
That explains that.
Yeah.
That's so cool though. Like, because I grew up in the 90s. I was too fat to skateboard. I like to lay down on a board and like wail it out. But all my friends were skaters.
Yeah.
They were all skaters, so we'd listen to like CKY. We'd watch Jackass.
Yeah.
There'd be Margera.
Yeah.
What do you think like brought that up? Because you said that Back to the Future was big for the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
Do you think Jackass brought it back for the 2000s?
It both drove it and it was a result of it. So without getting too wordy here, in the late 80s, there had been a real emphasis on this vertical skateboarding. And the problem was that not everybody could do it. You had to have a ramp.
Right.
And, not everybody could do that. And, generally you had to wear all the safety gear and all that sort of stuff. And it was, it was hard. Whereas street skating, just having a board and going anywhere you wanted was easy. It was accessible, and literally anybody could do it. You just had to have a board and a place to ride.
And balance.
Yeah.
And ankles that were not that of a 90-year-old woman.
True. But so skateboarding got a little bit bloated, let's say, where it was sort of like what happened with punk rock in the 70s. Like mainstream music got a little overindulgent. Big bands like Led Zeppelin and stuff, great. But a lot of people thought, man, this is just too much. And so punk rock was very much a return to the roots. It's like, 3 chords in a cloud of dust, and just like
the Sex
do
Pistols
your own.
popped up,
Yeah,
and everyone knew who they were.
Right. And so it was like, start your own band. It doesn't matter if you're good or not. Just, do what you're going to do. Well, so skateboarding kind of had its own similar sort of, not backlash, but opposite reaction to like the fancy pros that, did amazing things that nobody else could do. Where street skating was sort of like, it got its own, thing going. So there was a couple of big there was Thrasher and there was a Trans World Skateboarding, which was like the Goody Two Shoes magazine. And they were all, they were mostly promoting this older, this established style of skating. Well, there was a guy named Steve Rocco who was a pro skater himself that was very iconoclastic. He was, genius level intelligence, but he, like the anti-authoritarian streak a mile wide. Like if you tell him he can't do something, he's going to go do it.
Relatable.
Yeah. And he saw that street skating was coming up so much, but like he was being basically censored by the magazines, and like he liked to push, buttons. And so like he decided to start his own magazine called Big Brother. And Big Brother was like 92 293 or something like that. I forget when the first issue came out. And it was just totally transgressive in every possible way. It was Jackass before Jackass, essentially, but in a magazine form. They were aiming it at, just disaffected, I don't give a fuck, skaters. And they did so many weird things. Like the first 5 or 6 issues, every one was a different format. The first one was like a half size magazine. The next one was like bigger than Rolling Stone. The next one was like a spiral bound one. And this guy had made tons of money because he started skateboard companies that mainly promoted street skating. And they had like graphics that were like ripped off, like Bugs Bunny cartoon characters and stuff like that. And so Rocco made tons of money, and he was like, but he couldn't advertise his products very well in these other magazines. And so he's like, I'll start my own magazine. Fuck you. And so Big Brother was this, and he just hired a bunch of people to run it. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing. In fact, the first issue was supposed to be this great thing, and it came out so bad that they put a sticker on the front of it that said, due to the fact that nobody had any idea what the fuck they were doing, this issue has been declared a total failure. Therefore, we're just going to give it away for free. And,
excellent marketing.
Yeah, I mean, it was
they
genius.
knew their audience.
It was genius. And so, anyway, and so they would only sort of tangentially write about skateboarding. It was just like about them partying and doing stupid shit. They had the Bong Olympics or the Weed Olympics or something. Where they just a bunch of people getting high. They had and like they just do interviews. They had a toll-free number back before cell phones where you could call in the skater chat line. Some flunky employee from World Industries, the company that this guy started, would have to talk to just some random kid from anywhere in the country about nothing.
Call a skater.
Yeah.
So we're going to enter our last break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the rise of Jackass. We're going to talk about local skate parks, the need for skating, and what skating's like today. And we'll bring up how they close the state street trails, even though that's not skating. It's something to do outside.
It's very
with
similar.
It is.
Little I know about it, it's very similar.
It's something to do in your neighborhood, and now it's banished, and it's right up the street. I just want to go piss on those barricades. All right. We'll be back.
Dragging somebody on a sled, like on a piece of furniture behind him in the snow as a sled.
I definitely had,
stuff,
I've ridden on one of those before.
I was going to say, this is very Corey coded.
I accidentally hit the camera.
Yeah. So,
is the camera back in frame? Are we good?
You look.
I did kick
maybe
it.
move a little bit this way.
I did shift.
Yeah.
My bad. I got giant old feet. Big old feet.
You got excited.
I got so excited thinking about that time I rode on that sled.
Yeah.
It was actually where the Goodwill is now, and like where the Big Lots used to be. My friends took their old Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I rode in like a baby pool behind it, holding onto a rope, and it was fun.
Exactly.
I let go and I slid right into a building. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
It was great. Kids will be kids.
So basically,
all right. So we're back. And we were talking about Jackass and magazines, and during the break, producer Ryan came in and was like, yo, that was a Larry Flint magazine. And Larry Flint, for those of you who don't know, is the guy who made Hustler. So I would like to hear more about that, because like that seems like a very interesting brand to have.
Yeah. So Big Brother was this, a skateboard magazine that really... It talked about skateboarding, but it never took it very seriously. Like they'd have contest coverage, and it would just be, the misadventures of the writer getting on the train, or buying drugs and getting ripped
like
off,
Hunter Thompson,
or, something,
or Vice going to dog shows.
Yeah, but even less.
Coherent?
Just more clueless, like.
Love that. Love me a good clueless gonzo.
So, and again, it was mainly just like their misadventures amongst themselves,
It's my dream job.
Yeah. And so eventually they did the magazine, and then they started making a couple of videos, and, so like their first video was called Shit. Their second one was, I think, called Crap. And the third one, I think, was Boob. And so the whole aesthetic of the company, of World Industries at the time, like their early ads, it was like when computer design was still like really basic, like, desktop publishing. So they just did, Helvetica font, lowercase, stark black on white, like a lot of them. And so, but it stood out. And so like the covers of these videos, boob, shit, crap, it was just genius. And in the videos, they would have, like Johnny Knoxville was one of the guys that just started appearing in their videos, and he would just like not let them abuse him, but like he'd be like, "Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville, and I'm about to get hit by a car real soon." And sure enough, he jumps up in the air, and a car drives under him, and he gets flies off the windshield or something. "Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville, and I'm about to. This is a bulletproof vest," and he gets shot in the bulletproof vest with a real bullet.
Oh, that's incredible.
Stuff like that. And so Jeff Tremaine was the art director of the magazine. He actually went to school in St. Louis, went to Wash U. I met him. I skated vert ramps with him in 1985. They had a couple of writers, some photographers, and then Bam Margera out in Westchester, Pennsylvania, was just a 12, 13-year-old kid who was fearless skateboarder. And he was just a rambunctious little bastard, and he
still is.
Yeah, and he just filmed himself with his friends, And Bam was a incredible skateboarder, so he was good enough to be sponsored for skateboarding. But then he would just sort of like make his own videos of himself and his friends, pay $6 a day extra for insurance, and you can do whatever the fuck you want to a rental car, and then just show them trashing the rental car, driving, So basically, the Big Brother videos turned out to be some of the same guys that eventually got approached to do this TV show called Jackass.
Okay.
So Jeff Tremaine was like the executive producer, and Spike Jonze was the film director of Being John Malkovich and lots of other movies since then. He was a skateboarder and a BMX rider and a photographer and
a music video shooter.
Yeah,
he
right.
Shot music videos for like Pavement and Dinosaur Jr., who were also big in the skate scene.
Yeah.
Right? Dinosaur Jr. There was a lot of skate.
Yeah,
videos
right. A lot of videos used Dinosaur Jr. But Spike Jonze was originally a skater and a photographer, and then he started doing music videos in the early '90s when the most of the skate stuff kind of dried up. But he did the videography for the first World Industries videos that blew up the company. And
that's incredible.
So there was all this, a lot of these same people were just behind the scenes working with Big Brother magazine.
Wasn't Jason Lee a part of that? The guy who would go on to be
he
Earl?
was.
My name is Earl.
So Jason Lee skated for Blind Skateboards, which was one of the companies that Steve Rocco had, along with World Industries, and 101 was another. They had like 3 different companies that that he basically owned, but they had different sort of directions, artistic directions and branding. And so, Jason Lee skated for Blind. He was a pro skater. He was amazing. And anyway, but back to the Larry Flynt thing.
Yeah, when did Larry Flynt get it?
So the really interesting thing is Big Brother got much tamer as a magazine after Larry Flynt purchased it.
Okay.
The first maybe 15 ballpark issues of Big Brother were just when Steve Rocco owned it. It had Dick House Publishing, I think was the name.
Dick House is who does Jackass as well as The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia.
Right.
Great documentary.
Yeah. So, but after Larry Flynt bought them, they became more corporate.
Oh, bullshit.
And so
sellouts.
So like, I mean, it was still crazy. And they did a kids issue. I don't know if this was before or after.
A kids issue?
Well, focusing on skateboarders that were really young, little brats that were really good at skating. But there was all sorts of cuss words and drug use and stuff in that issue too. So the parents get a hold of it and they call the local TV station and they come down, and poor Jeff Tremaine or somebody gets on camera and mumbles a few words because they're not ready for it, and but they did whatever they wanted, like
corrupting the youth of America. And I love it.
And actually, there was a time where a bunch of Big Brother subscribers ended up getting, I don't know if it was Hustler, but it was one of Larry Flynt's porno mags by mistake.
Oh no!
In their subscription.
Yeah. That was a pivotal moment.
He was the coolest kid in class that day.
I mean, listen, I used to run the porno mag game at Catholic school.
Yeah.
there's a lot out there.
Yeah.
There was in the 90s.
It was
That
the
did
good old
happen.
days before the internet.
That
I mean,
did
what
happen.
you would do is you would go to your friend's house, right?
Yeah,
and you would
right.
tell their mom where the dad, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I found a Playboy. And then the mom would make the dad throw out all the Playboys. And you knew where the paper recycling was at the school because you're having a paper recycling
Yeah.
drive. So you jump in, you get all the porno mags and
Yeah.
skateboard mags too, a lot of times.
Yeah.
And you would put them in a locker no one was using and you'd sell them at lunch.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a
Love
really
it.
good
It's very,
racket.
very organized.
It was such a
Entrepreneurial
good
spirit.
racket.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
There
like
you go.
I did that with my skater friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skater friends had Playboys. They listened to System of a Down. We were playing GameCube. And like, so I came up in like the skater
Yeah.
culture of
Yeah.
the 90s and 2000s, even though I didn't skate. I just hung out with the skate kids because I was the punk kid, emo kid.
Yeah.
I like to do jackass stunts. Like I'd be like, I'll chug that whole bottle of hot sauce while you film
Right.
me. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that was all just part of the culture. So I've noticed it's moved away a little bit from that now.
Well, now it's the Olympics. 2020 was the first time.
Yeah, it's like skateboard has hit mainstream again. And then, so I want to talk to you about some local things.
Okay.
So CJ, who runs a juicery, they just moved to Post Commons, by the way, from downtown.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to start a riverfront skate park here. That's like a public skate park.
Yeah.
And we do have one at Hellrung. I just want to know if you've ever skated that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it good, the one at Hellrung?
No.
Okay. Why is it bad?
So to their credit, I guess the city of Alton wanted to provide some skateboarding facilities. There's a cliche in skateboarding, but it's true. If your town doesn't have a skate park, your town is a skate park.
Lots of hills in Alton.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
brick hills, though.
Right. But kids are going to skate wherever they can.
Absolutely.
The reason it's bad is because it was, I don't know who designed it, but it was not a reputable skateboard company like made of skateboarders. I think the thought was kind of like what it was in the 70s, like, oh, we'll just build a skate park. But if you don't build a good one, it's almost worse than not having one at all.
Yeah, I mean, now it's down for like
What is-
$30,000 on
What
repair.
have you ever been to the one in Wood River?
I've
the
been
soccer
there,
thing?
it's never been open when I was there.
Well, so
Maybe
my kid
once or
had a
twice.
birthday party
Yeah.
there last year. We rented
Yeah.
out the little pavilion, and the kids didn't like it. Like
Yeah.
their friend is a skateboarder,
Yeah.
and they're like, it's kind of lame.
Well, yeah.
The one
so
in the
like-
middle of that field?
Yeah.
By the
Oh, that one
soccer
sucks.
pavilion,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
So
one.
when towns started building skate parks in the late 90s or early 2000s, there were a lot of companies that would say, oh, here's, like sort of like turnkey opportunity, like prefab ramps that were made of metal, they would arguably last a long time, but they would require maintenance and nobody knew how to maintain them, or they weren't really very well made. So like the stuff at Hellrung some of it might have been prefab concrete that they just kind of like set in place. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if it is, but it's the equivalent of like a concrete version of these prefab ramps that are just like the most generic, basic, dull, unimaginative stuff you can think of. But it got the city to be able to say, well, we built something for it. I'm sure the intent was good, but it just wasn't good. It was like hiring, just some random person that doesn't know the dimensions of a basketball court to build a basketball court or a tennis court.
So do you
Okay.
think a riverfront skate park would be doable?
Do you think it'd be
it
like,
would be
do you think it'd be
fantastic.
a tourist
Yeah,
destination?
It could be. So like Louisville, Kentucky built something in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s that was, it was huge and it's still there.
I've been there
In
to
a
the
di-
park.
Yeah,
the
they
park on the
redid a lot of it.
riverfront.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Kids Park.
Louisville's great.
I was there
You
with
know.
my friend a couple years ago. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
But like Des Moines, Iowa, over a period of like 10 plus years, people planned and raised money and made community connections to build what is now like one of the largest and not the largest skate parks in the country, right on the riverfront. And it is a tourist attraction. They held, like, just after it opened, they had like an X Games or a Dew Tour, qualifier or Olympic qualifier there or something. And so the mistake that a lot of municipalities made early on was they would make a skate park, but they would put it like in some disused piece of land somewhere so that you can get the skateboarders away from the places that they would go otherwise. But the problem is if you hide it somewhere, the skaters, they'll still skate it, but just anybody that just wants to go and do shady stuff is going to do it there too, because it's out of the public eye. And that's what, Wood River, it's more visible, but it's junk. Hellrung is hidden in a neighborhood, and it's just not good enough for people to come there. So what smart communities have done though is now they're putting it they're putting the skate park by the police station or by the fire station or by the athletic fields or something. They're putting it so that it's not like an afterthought. It's like, no, skateboarding is actually a really cool thing. And so like in Des Moines, people will just stop by and watch. In Venice, California. Now Venice is a little different because it's like the whole place is a circus, but like that skate park there, it's just like people just stop by and they're like, oh my God, look at what those kids are doing, So a smart city will plan for a skate park to be just as well planned as, the baseball diamonds, or the soccer fields or something like that. If you hide it off somewhere, it's not going to succeed in the way that you would like it to. So don't be afraid to show it, raise the money, listen to the skaters, hire a good company to design it and build it. It doesn't always have to be huge, but like you got to have a quality one. Otherwise, you're absolutely wasting your money.
Yeah, and I've noticed that skateboarders are more wholesome again than they used to be.
Some
A
are.
lot of Christian skateboarders.
Yeah, lots of like good, wholesome, like people helping out kids skateboard. Like it's more of an intergenerational bonding thing in a lot of places than it used to be. And I think that's really neat.
So one of the cool things about skateboarding is that, I have to think about this. I'm 61 years old now. I can skate with kids who are 8 years old and everybody in between. And it's about the skateboarding. Maybe the kids are a little bit weirded out by seeing like people old enough to be their grandpa doing it. But at least in the thick of it, it's like nobody seems to care. Right. And like it doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, yellow, you're fat, skinny, male, female, trans, anything. It doesn't matter if you're skating. You have this thing in common, and because it's so much fun. So thankfully, there's enough older skateboarders that have kind of made it their life, even if it's not a profession, they've just been doing it forever, that they find ways to give back or to, use skateboarding as a part of life that, like if somebody's into it, there's all sorts of things you can do with it.
It's all about finding joy, though. I think kids
absolutely
should see older people enjoying themselves and having a hobby and having fun and not just working for the man all day long and coming home and yelling at him.
Yeah, knowing the things they love don't have expiration dates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So going back to the 70s real quick, just very briefly, there was a guy named Stacy Peralta. He was one of the Z-Boys. He was one of the top skateboarders ever. He described it, when he became a professional skateboarder, like he was like, at the time, that was like saying you were a professional, like yo-yoer or something like that, or which of course there's people that do that. As
absolutely.
Too,
they used to come to our grade schools,
or it was like, 15 years ago, it was like, oh, you play video games for a living? It was like the stupidest thing you could possibly think of, but no, it was possible. But anyway, like now, there's so many different facets of skateboarding. So there's the Olympic version, which is very clean cut and, corporate and marketable and stuff like that. But the sort of the soul of skateboarding for most people is still you just have your skateboard, you just go and do it. And I take this for granted, but a lot of people see, aren't you worried about getting hurt? Or, I've been hurt so many times. I've broken bones countless times. And I go back to work and, like broke a collarbone or something. Like, well, does this mean you're going to hang it up? Well, probably not. No, I hope I don't do that one thing again. But like, getting hurt, it's like, I mean, of course nobody likes it, but it's just like, no, why would I stop? You know? And people that like get a scrape on their palm or something like that, and they're like, oh my God, it's like, I don't even think about that kind of stuff. And just also just like when you really want, like when you're working on a trick, yeah, you might fall 100 times trying it. And sometimes you get really hurt, but it's like the persistence of doing it. And so that, I mean, Jerry Seinfeld was, had a little thing, a few years back where he's doing his comedians in cars thing. And he's like, you know who I really admire? Skateboarders. They're just getting wrecked out there, but they just keep doing it. And that attitude, I think, is maybe people learn it in other ways, but it's like, don't give up just because something's difficult. I mean, that makes it worth doing sometimes, So that to me is one of the most amazing things about skateboarding. It's just the persistence that you have to have. And it's, you can't fake it. You can't, you can't pretend to be a good skateboarder, you either are or you aren't, or, like having fun, it's not about the results you get. It's about like finding your own limits and then kind of pushing against them and seeing what's possible for you. So it doesn't matter if you're the best, but like if you're in a session with a bunch of other skateboarders and you do something that is hard for you or that is a challenge for you and you succeed at it, the other skaters recognize that easily, and everybody's stoked for everybody else. So
I love this. You just reminded me of like Mr. Feeney, like in skateboarding's our lesson.
Yeah, and it's a metaphor. It can be a metaphor for just about anything.
Yeah, ever call me Corey Matthews. I hate of all media, he's the worst of them. He's the worst. I'm an Eric. I'm an Eric.
Anyway, okay, moving on. I wanted to ask you some. I found some.
Wait, no. Before that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can we talk about the State Street trails real quick?
Yes,
sure.
Those closed down.
Okay.
So I know that isn't skating, but it seems like a lot of your start came from doing neighborhood backyard stuff.
Yeah.
And we talked about how the city like hides things away and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But like whenever people build something on their own accord, how do you feel about the city closing it off?
I understand that there's some amount of people that don't feel comfortable with something like that existing in their neighborhood.
There's like one person.
Yeah.
There's like two.
Right.
Like two.
Right. Like I try to picture that. So like in San Francisco, for example, there's, the steep streets and there's some of these really, fancy houses and stuff. Well, skateboarders are always like doing wall rides on them and stuff and skating the handrail out in front of them of like your residents. And if it's a really good skate spot, the skaters are just going to keep doing that. I can see if I lived there, I might even be like, dude, it's 2 a.m. What are you doing? Or you're wrecking my wall or something like that. Like I get that. So I understand that, people are like, oh, I'm afraid there's going to be too much traffic. I don't know what they're doing back there. I'm afraid it's going to bring drugs in here, or it's all this sort of stuff. Probably less than in the general community at large.
Yeah.
It's always possible that, yes, something like that could happen there. But in general, it is such a more positive thing. And I wish I could sort of talk to some of those people and be like, what is really bothering you?
My original idea was to do this interview in spring, and I was going to have you teach me how to skateboard in front of maybe a house that may house some people who don't like the trails very much. Yeah. And that was my ultimate pettiness.
Yes, it's sort of about the trails, but I wonder what is, I can't help but think that it's something else that is really troubling those people, that
they just don't have a hobby like skateboarding.
I just assume everyone's a closet at something.
Yeah, I don't think they have fun in life.
If you want to get really deep, I think we all have our own traumas, right? There's some untreated trauma there, and it's like I wish that person would be able to move beyond that. Like a good conversation with somebody that really cared might be able to be like, it's really not the guys, the people on bikes that I'm worry about.
God, I wish I had that optimism.
Yeah.
Just one good conversation.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
in my world, it's like, well, if I don't threaten to take off his kneecaps, then I don't get anything done.
But yeah, I wouldn't like. I read like I saw the testimonials that these people gave against the trails, and it was like, I get it, you're concerned, but like, I wish they could. I wish
It's like Nicole
something would
watching a
change her mind.
skateboard video. I can change him.
That was backyard wrestling.
Oh, backyard.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Anyway.
that's so
Okay,
much
moving
pressure.
on.
All
Okay,
right, so
can I
Nicole has
ask?
a game.
I have my not really a game. I just was wondering if you know any of these facts and if you
Okay.
can give us a little more information about them. 'Cause
Okay.
It's very okay. Do you know what animal that a skater once used their board to successfully fight off in a Canadian park?
probably not a moose because that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, moose would kill you.
I don't know. No, I haven't heard of this particular thing.
It was a cougar.
Okay. Wow.
How old was she?
Do you know of any places in the world that skateboard is prohibited or was prohibited back in the day?
Yeah. Well, so countless cities or streets, areas of cities in the U.S.
Countries.
But Norway, it was outlawed
Ding, ding,
in Norway
ding, you
throughout
win
the
that way.
80s. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
It was
The Soviet
a lot of
Union
it.
loved it.
It was
Yeah,
outlawed
Soviet
between
Union.
Yeah, the
78
Soviet-
and 89.
Yeah.
It was outlawed.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know when National or Go Skateboarding Day is?
I believe it's June 21st every year.
It is? Ding, 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 ding. You know he's a true skateboarder.
Are you trying to expose this
Oh,
man as
No,
like,
no.
wait,
I just wanted to text his, like, he's been very knowledgeable.
That was a trick question.
Okay.
Every day is go skateboarding.
This is such a feel-good freaking episode.
Yeah, this is wholesome. We have a skater man, and it's the most wholesome one yet.
It is. Do you know
Yeah.
how many roughly skate parks are now in the United States?
Ooh, boy, that's a good one. I don't know, at least 5,000.
3,100.
Okay.
So we need to up those numbers
Okay,
up
yeah,
with a
yeah.
riverfront skate
Yeah.
park. That would be cool.
That would be great. I would love a riverfront skate park.
Yeah.
I don't even skate. I'd just hang out.
Do you know the longest distance ever recorded for a single ollie,
Longest.
which was achieved by Jordan Hoffert? Do you know the longest distance?
Well,
or can you guess the longest?
Let's see. It depends. I'm assuming that means like not going off of something, but just like a flat ground ollie. I'm gonna try to go a little over 20 feet.
16.7 feet.
Okay,
Not
yeah.
bad, not bad. Thank you for humoring me. 'Cause I was reading these
yeah.
skateboarding facts and I just thought it was interesting. And thank you
I
for
love
humor.
it. So, okay, before we go, we got to talk about your photography.
Okay.
I understand that you do some photography now.
Well, I started photographing skateboarding just because, and again, it's really started with my friend Steve. I never had a camera that I could use, and this was film cameras only,
Yeah.
right? But he did. He had a little Instamatic or something, and he'd take photos of us when we'd skate, now and then, and you'd get like one picture. It's a film. It's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different, right? You take it, you have to take it somewhere, drop off the film, wait either hours or days, to get it back. And then a lot of times it just wasn't all that good, but still you treasured those. But yeah, I got a little 35 millimeter point and shoot camera for high school graduation, used that for a couple of years. But yeah, from like like my birthday in 1985, I had enough money to buy myself a nice Nikon camera and one lens, a zoom lens. And then in 89, I got a fisheye lens, which is great for, getting the whole context in. And so from like 89 through about 92, I took a lot of skateboarding photos and I got it, I got enough of them and I had some good people to photograph and I traveled just a little bit here and there so yeah, I had some published photos in skateboarding magazines at the time.
Which ones?
Well, the first ones I got were in Thrasher in like 1983. It was like a spring break article. Just me and my friend Steve skating in the rain in Kansas City and stuff. And then there was two other magazines, Power Edge and Trans World Skateboarding. And then a couple of little skater made zines. But yeah, there's a few that I'm really, really proud of that I would say, stack up against the best things that anybody at the time was doing. So
Like what?
I had one that was a centerfold of a guy named Glenn Stallings who owned Altered Skates of America, Team Onion, which is the hat I'm wearing here. He was on North Broadway in North St. Louis. There were some metal full pipes, and I got a silhouette shot of him with this crazy cockeyed smokestack and the pipe. And that's one, they printed it on like the centerfold of a magazine, but it was like a poster. Like the other side was like a full color poster that somebody else had shot. But in the magazine was on the other side of this was my photo.
That's cool.
And then Rob Dyrdek, who hosted
Robin Big.
Blanket, Robin Big, Ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Thank you. When he was a young pro skater, I traveled to Dayton, Ohio, and shot some photos of him that got published in Transworld. One of those is one of the best photos I've ever shot. Just a few. I'm blanking.
Have you
on
ever
some of
gotten
the
to go
others.
international?
Not for photography, but I did travel for slalom skateboarding. I went to the World Championships in Austria one year in 2006, and then went to Switzerland in 2008, and then I went competed in the World Championships again in 2022 down in Argentina.
Wow.
Holy shit!
Wow.
So you're still doing competition?
You are
Yeah.
still.
That's what's so like. Just last night on the Olympics in the Winter Olympics snowboarding, there's a parallel giant slalom, and there were people in their 40s doing that. Like the guy that won it was like 40.
Damaged her ACL was 41. The one.
Oh yeah, Lindsey Vaughn.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like the winner of the men's parallel giant slalom is a guy from Austria, Benjamin Karl. He's won last Olympics and this. He's 40. And for some reason in slalom, even though the absolute best people are in their 20s or 30s, actually one guy in his 40s, a Latvian guy that's still insanely good. But yeah, like I'm 61 and I can hang with, I'm still in definitely top 10% worldwide.
Holy shit!
Legit. I'm not gonna,
Mr. I'm just
we're
an
gonna have
average
to have
skater.
you back on
Yeah,
in the
we're
spring
out of
so we
time,
can-
but like,
Yes.
we're
Wait,
bringing
no,
you back.
one more. I do have a. Can I ask the
Go,
last
go.
question? My last question. I've been wondering this entire interview, and our viewers, and they will want to know this.
Okay.
We need a life update on your friend Steve. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned him like a million times. Are you guys still friends? How is he doing?
Yeah.
Did he ever like get out of his rebel stage?
Oh boy. No, he didn't. So for last 20, 25 years, he's lived in Berkeley, California. He still skates. He's got some injuries. He's got a nagging wrist thing that's just really screwed him up. He's a very good photographer now. He's learned photography over the years. That's how he makes his living.
He's doing okay though.
But he's doing okay.
He's doing okay.
And
you guys are still friends. You guys
Yeah,
still talk.
we're still friends, but we can't stand each other most of the time when we get together. We're oil and water
Childhood
personality
friends.
wise.
Shit. Okay.
So, but no, we love to go. We still get together maybe every couple of years and maybe do a skate trip somewhere until we want to kill each other. So yeah, no, we still keep it.
Thank you. I know I can go to sleep tonight because I had to ask that question. I've been wondering all this time. Like,
Yeah.
I was like,
I
he's
love
talking
that.
about Steve. I hope Steve's not dead. Like, no,
Steve's not dead. He's
I'm
alive
so
and
glad
well.
you're not dead, Steve. Thank
He's
you.
alive and well and taking photos and skating when he can. And
So where can we find your stuff before we go? Like where can we find your work? Where can we find your photos, your skateboarding?
well, so people have been yelling at me for years to do a show of photos or do a book or something. And I keep saying, yeah, I'm eventually going to get to it. So right now there's no like one collection. My Instagram has a few things. I'm at JBH_STL. If you see any Transworld Skateboarding or Power Edge magazines from the late 80s, early 90s, they're in there. But yeah, I've well hidden.
Do you have any competitions coming up that you know about in the next?
Yeah. So I'll probably be going down to Houston, Hockley, Texas, out northwest of Houston in March. There's a slalom race that's been going this will be the 21st year in a row, called the Sizzler. I'll probably be going for that. I've gone every year since 2006. I've gone down there for the Sizzler. There's the Hometown Classic up in Wakanda, Illinois, northwest of Chicago in May or June. I'll probably go to that. And yeah, there's just, it's mainly like slalom events that I'll go to, but I want to there's Montana has all these amazing skate parks that have been built all around, and a lot of them on reservations. And much of the funding for those comes from, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, the bassist for Pearl Jam, Jeff Ament. He's spent hundreds of thousands, if not a couple $1 million, helping to fund skate parks on Indian reservations in Montana.
Oh, hell yeah.
And there's some old, sort of like an old man mini tour that happens in like May or something. I would love to meet up with some people up there. I've never done that, so that might be fun. And last but not least, maybe in like May in Albuquerque, they have all these arroyos or drainage ditches that snake all around the city because they have flash flooding. And but they're amazing to skate in, and they have an event called Ditch Slap out there that I want to go out and do. Ditch
love
Slap.
it. Oh God, I love it.
Oh,
So
I love
much.
the names of these things.
Do like three days where they rent a bus, and you just show up, and the bus shuttles you up. You ride down the ditch, and then you get picked back up. So
That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Hell yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing all these
you.
stories.
My
Like,
pleasure.
we have to have you back on.
it's my pleasure.
Definitely. We're having you back on. You're going to teach Nicole how to skate.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, one other
petty
thing I
skate.
should mention real quick. I'm part of what's called KHVT. It stood for Kings Highway Vigilante Transitions originally. Under the Kings Highway Viaduct south of I-44 in St. Louis, there was a skate park for a few years that DIY, was just built by skateboarders, throwing concrete up against the walls and stuff. Eventually, the bridge got demolished, but KHVT is a nonprofit, a 501c3 that advocates for building skate parks in the city of St. Louis. The St. Louis area, and I'm including Alton in that, needs more skate parks, and KHVT is trying to do that. But whether it's that organization or just grassroots or however, we need more places to skateboard, and arguably, include bikes and skates in that too. I don't care. Some skateboarders are really skateboarding only, but if it gets good skate terrain built, I'm so.
Hell yeah. So all wheels come rolling in.
As far as I'm concerned.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you
Connect
so
with
much
your
for
inner
coming.
child. Like that's all it's about. Connect with your inner child.
And
right?
just have fun in
just
your
have
community.
fun,
Meet
yes.
people who like to do things.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank
this
you.
was one of our
Thank you. This is my pleasure.
just such a good conversation. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, actually. So
Okay.
really appreciate
awesome.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Well, let's end this one wholesomely. Have a great day, and we love you.
We love you.
All right. Thanks.
Shit, poop. Sorry.
No.
I was gonna say that's the only time.
No, he said it. Those were things. Those were things. Those were names.